Airline pilot Steve Craven was murdered in his own home in Edgewood, Kentucky. The last two people to see Steve alive were his wife, Adele, and his contractor and friend, Rusty McIntyre. Steve didn't know it, but Rusty had been working overtime in Steve's bedroom, keeping Steve's indiscreet wife, Adele, happy. Now, 2 weeks after Steve's murder, police were sitting in Rusty's living room with a tape recorder and a lot of questions.
What involvement did you have with Steve and what happened to him? Why do you think somebody would have done this to him?
No answer. So police detectives pushed by letting him know they were very aware of his relationship with Steve's wife. And then they went fishing just to see what Rusty might offer up.
I don't know if she put her spell on you or not, but the facts and the evidence indicate that you were involved. And Rusty, you need to come clean with what happened.
Rusty was extremely nervous, extremely fidgety, but he started answering questions, and I confronted him with everything.
That's when Rusty told police he was there when Steve was murdered, but he wasn't the killer, and neither was Adele.
Who did? Who did, Rusty?
That's right. There was a third wheel on this murder date. His name was Ronnie Pryor. Ronnie was a cash-strapped handyman who'd worked for Rusty on and off for a few months and let it slip that he'd do just about anything for money. Now the police had enough information to arrest Rusty and take him down to the station so they could get the rest of the story.
What did you talk to Ronnie about? That I had a situation that was worth a whole lot of money, and I needed somebody taken care of. He would get a lump sum of $5,000, probably another lump sum of $5,000, and then like for the next 5 years get $1,000 or so per year.
Ronnie agreed. All he had to do was follow the plan that was already mapped out. But Rusty told police he wasn't the one calling the shots. No, the mastermind behind Steve Craven's death was none other than his wife of more than a decade, Adele. Clearly, her days of standing meekly in her husband's shadow had come to an end. According to Rusty, Adele was sick of kowtowing to Steve, his control of her, and the purse strings. With Steve gone, she would be in charge, and she would be free to spend money. Money that she would absolutely have, thanks to Steve's life insurance policy.
She and Rusty thought Stephen was worth $500,000 and that they would collect the money and live happily ever after.
In early July of 2000, Adele met with Rusty and Ronnie, the two men who could make her dream a reality. Adele had her husband's pistol, even though she had previously told police her husband didn't have a pistol.
Was it decided you'll shoot him with my gun for last resort purposes? Last resort. And how was he to be killed then? To be hit with crowbar.
Regular crowbar.
Green.
Steel.
Green.
That's right, a green crowbar. Green like the specks of paint the coroner found clinging to Steve Craven's skull. Rusty was in deep, deep trouble, and he knew it. So when detectives asked him to help their investigation by nailing Ronnie, in exchange for leniency, Rusty agreed. They set up a tape recorder and had Rusty call Ronnie to tell him he had his payment for killing Steve.
Well, I was able to get some money, okay, and I want to give it to you before I get out of town, okay? No problem.
Ronnie took the bait.
Well, you want to meet back Super Bowl? That sounds good to me. All righty, okay. See you there shortly. Okay, bud, bye.
Hook, line, and sinker. That night, Ronnie fell fast asleep, thinking his money problems were far behind him. Little did he know, his troubles were just beginning.
At about 2 o'clock in the morning, I went and took some officers to wake Mr. Pryor up and to scare him a little bit and get his heart rate going. Then I put him in my cruiser, and I took him back immediately into the interview room.
How do you feel about being interviewed today?
Being here, I'm very, very nervous. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. Are you cold?
No, I'm not cold.
A
I'm
little
just
bit nervous?
freaking out,
That's all right, bud.
wondering what the hell did I do?
Like kill Steve Craven with a green crowbar? But police would get to that in a minute. First, they told him that the very private call with Rusty wasn't so private.
He knew that the gig was up, and he said, "You burned me." And that's when I knew that he was confessing.
Okay. You know the truth. Rusty calls me up one day, says I need to meet you somewhere. And I meet with him, and he's telling me he needs to take care of a problem.
That problem was Steve Craven. And finally, police were able to piece together exactly what happened to him. According to Ronnie and Rusty's interviews, Adele picked a day when Steve wasn't planning to fly out until later. That meant he'd be free to meet with his old pal Rusty to talk about upcoming house projects like the leaky shower head in the basement. On the designated morning, Rusty and Ronnie met up at a local convenience store to wait for Adele to call and tell them the kids were out of the house, and Steve was there and expecting Rusty. At 9:12, Adele called.
She says she was ready. Is that what she said? Get this over with.
Rusty drove to Adele's house with a six-pack, the green crowbar, and Ronnie in the bed of the truck, hidden under a blanket. When they got to the house, Rusty parked in the back and waited for Adele.
She came downstairs, motioned that it was okay for Ronnie to get into position.
Where'd you go?
I went into the room where the sliding glass door was.
While Ronnie hid downstairs in the spare bedroom, Rusty went upstairs to talk to Steve. They had beer in styrofoam cups. After they talked a little, Rusty asked Steve to show him the faulty shower head in the basement bathroom. The two men went downstairs. This was all part of the plan. Rusty and Steve looking at the shower head, Ronnie hiding in the spare room, and Adele positioned in the garage. One of the most brutal attacks the Edgewood Police Department had ever seen was about to be unleashed.